You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. Today's topic is the Season 1 episode, On Leather Wings.
It's full of choices simultaneously weird and brilliant.
I think before we can even talk about the weirdness that is On Leather Wings, we have to talk about the impact of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, well, this is the first episode. It's really important to understand the impact it's had on all superhero TV shows, at the very least, films, everything since then, stretching all the way back to 1992.
Yeah, that was the thing that shocked me, is that going back, and now I've watched these several times. I was around when they first came on. I was watching when they were airing on Sunday night in primetime to start with. So I was there from get. But rewatching these, I was stunned at just how fresh they still look. This thing could air today, and it's hand-drawn, which might raise a few eyebrows.
Use a small facelift in the sense that you have an aspect ratio fix where it's widescreen compatible
absolutely.
And maybe cleaned up. But I know the artistic direction you're talking about, though, this is fantastic. It's exceptional, and I think it still stands head and shoulders above most of programming today. Even
I agree. I fully agree. Clearly, you're getting a lot of visual influence from the Batman movie of 1989 with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. You've got a very Batman 89 Batmobile. The music is Danny Elfman. The Art Deco / weird timelessness, which we will continue to return to as we speak.
Oh, yeah. All of that's still very, very present. I feel like they borrowed that. I think the movies are kind of the same way. That first 89, it's kind of, if you go back and watch it, there's a lot of weird stuff. You're like, wait, why is this all...
Absolutely. When is this?
Yes.
Here's all these guys wearing fedoras and trench coats at the same time that you obviously have a super bat computer and the high-tech Batmobile.
And a flying Batwing, all that stuff.
And that carries over into this. You're going to have supercomputers that have black and white screens. You're going to have people shooting Thompson machine guns at a time when shooting machine guns on kids' TV was not allowed.
Oh, yeah, very edgy. I think that's a great point because especially the further you get into the 90s is really when you see a lot of other children's programming with superheroes, Spider-Man, the animated series being a poster child for this, being heavily censored, like back to the point where they have to redub lots of the dialogue with not the same voice actors. So this is Batman the Animated Series is very, very cutting edge and very edgy.
This is our first introduction to what will become kind of the DC Animated Universe house style of very stripped down, simplified, but really bulky figures. Like Batman is a physical presence.
Yes.
So is Commissioner Gordon. I mean, these guys are big guys.
These are grown-ups.
Yes. One often talked about piece of how they approach the art that Caleb is going to really illuminate for us is their choice of using black paper backgrounds to draw on rather than white paper backgrounds. This let them do some pretty fantastic noir lighting, stylistic things. Caleb, as our resident film expert, talk to us about film noir.
Yeah, so film noir is a style of crime film that cropped up in the 1940s and was really popular for about 15 or 20 years, all the way up until the late 50s, early 60s, and known for a few different things. But I think as it relates to Batman the Animated Series, specifically On Leather Wings, is the visual style, which is your low-key black and white visual style. Now, those films, of course, are fully in black and white, and while this is not in black and white, you're still looking at very heavy use of shadows.
Yeah, big shadows and muted color palette.
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. And the way they use like alleyways and buildings, the way they look, it all feels like it's really pulled from this weird 1940s era. And this is also fits right in with the Batman characteristic of being a detective, because in noir films, you almost always features a detective or a police officer, sometimes a criminal, or a corrupt cop. All these things kind of tie into the ideas that existed in Batman for a long, long time.
Absolutely. One anecdote about the muted color palette that I still need to look into and make sure is a thing is that when they started this show, they had no money, and they borrowed most of the crew from Tiny Toon Adventures. That's actually where Bruce Timm, head of the show, came from.
And Paul Dini, too.
Yes. And they had to use the Tiny Toons color palette on Batman, so there was a lot of, mix some black into that. Like,
Yeah.
let's darken that up. One thing that I think came from this show originally that still carries through into comic book portrayals of Gotham City is that when you start with black paper, if you're going to have a daytime shot, you've got to color the sky red.
Oh, yeah.
The skies in Gotham are still mysteriously red, even in the comic books today,
Yeah.
and I really think this is why. I think that just got implanted in people's minds.
Right. And it looks cool. Let's be real. It looks really great.
Looks super cool.
But no, I think it's a great point. At least the first batch of episodes was made on a shoestring budget. My understanding is that Warner Brothers says, hey, we want a Batman cartoon. Go make one for us, with no money.
And for this to be the thing that comes out the other side, clearly they just decided they were going to get married to some creative ideas and hang with it. And if Warner Brothers liked it, great. And if not, fine, because you gave us no money. One thing that I'm going to keep bringing up stylistically is that every episode gets a title card. I love the title cards. They are film noir style title card for a movie, but then they go an extra mile. There's almost always not just the treatment of kind of an airbrushed font, but then there's always something going on in the background that tells you something about what this episode is going to be about.
Right. I think the one I always remember, and we'll get to this episode later, but it's like Heart of Ice, for instance, like it's snowing, little tiny details like that.
I think Heart of Ice even has the snow globe, the ballerina snow globe.
Oh, wow.
So watch this space for when we get to Heart of Ice, people.
Oh, yeah.
You will cry your eyes out.
Josh, I think that's a great point because I feel like it goes all the way back to my belief that in the 21st century we've kind of lost the art of the tease, which is you tease something where you lay out this very bare bones like title card. Here's the title. Here's an animation to kind of clue you on kind of what to expect without telling you any plot points.
Absolutely.
Nothing. It's a great way to hook people in early on. And I think this is something that not only has it been removed from most TV shows in general, just for the sake of time allotment, I believe, but it's something we see in the, even film, the way films and TV shows are marketed. Like there's no secrecy. And I think that all is very interwoven into this need to overwhelm and hook the audience as quick as possible. It's just a totally different method that we have than what we have today.
I think you've nailed something for Batman the Animated Series specifically, because one thing that we've talked a lot about off the air, and it will come up in these shows, is how plot-wise and pacing-wise, this was not a show for kids.
No.
I mean,
no.
My child loves it. He's been watching it with me for most of his 10 years, but it does not pace itself like a children's show. It doesn't look like a children's show.
Well, firstly, it doesn't star kids. At least today, you could never have a show about kids that start adults, and that's why you have things like Young Justice or Teen Titans. That's why Spider-Man was so popular, and that's why X-Men, the animated series, had Jubilee as a prominent character. Every show had to have a child in it so that the kids could relate, right? I don't know if I actually agree with that philosophy, but there's been a huge change in the way they view children's programming. This is from a different era.
Absolutely.
Where you could totally show adults fighting crime, guns, the whole nine yards.
But it's from a different era that's still different from other stuff in that era even. You're going to hear us talk about this in our next episode when we talk about Pretty Poison. You're going to hear us talk about this in an episode that I jokingly refer to as Cool Hand Batman, where he barely shows up in his Batman. It's just they were just doing their own thing, and the title cards are absolutely representative of that, I think.
Definitely.
So. More to the point, there's no origin story.
What?
What madness!
I mean, Joshua, I just assumed every superhero ever had to have an origin story before we get the get-go. I mean, heck, Spider-Man's had 2. I mean, hell, Batman's had how many in the film? Like, if I learn anything from film, it's that we have to have an origin story, right?
I have seen the Waynes murdered on screen more times than I've changed my underwear lifetime.
Wow, guys, that's a lot of dead Waynes and not enough underwear.
No, it's the right amount of underwear and way too many dead Waynes.
Shh, that's what he wants you to think.
I don't need your shade. Yeah, they just jump headlong into it.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this as we dive into characters, but they really assume Batman's been at this for a minute.
I think that's really great because that actually kind of gives us a core mystery about who is Batman. Why is he doing this thing? Putting this into context, this show was made in 1992, back before superheroes everywhere all the time. Every single person knows every origin story, and they know all these paths. They know all the supervillain origin stories. So it was just a different time when I think people might have had the legitimate question, oh, what drove this guy to be Batman?
It was actually a plot point in Batman 89 in a way that is possibly questionable. The A-plot was tied to the fact that his parents were murdered, which drove him to be Batman. but they did not do an origin story.
They go an entire 50 or so episodes before they do an origin story, where they did it with The Mask of the Phantasm as a theatrical release.
True.
And even that was not a full-blown origin story.
No.
There was still a lot of things left to the imagination.
We're going to get some psychological stuff with his parents, especially with Thomas Wayne, but it's still assumed that we all know why Batman is doing the things he's doing.
Right.
So speaking of that, let's dive into some characters. Let's talk about Bruce Wayne and Batman in this show.
Okay, so I'm seeing here we've got Playboy billionaire, right? Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Not as featured, not very heavily featured in this particular episode.
No, not so much, but they do use him to great effect.
Yes.
And before we go any further, let's just say, billionaire Playboy was not a good look in 1992, and it's an even worse look in the year of our Lord 2017.
I thought we loved rich people, Joshua. What are you talking about?
It's not even the rich people that I have a problem with, because he does have to afford grapple guns and batarangs and Batmobiles. It's the Playboy part. It's the part where he has a string of broken hearts left behind him.
You mean Bambi?
Yeah. Yes. In this particular episode, I mean Bambi. As contrast, we can look again to Batman 89, one of my favorite portrayals of Bruce Wayne, not only because Michael Keaton is great, but also because he's portrayed as just kind of weird and eccentric instead of the kind of jerk that would screw women over.
Really looking back on it in hindsight with what we know now, I would say in that film and I don't want to hope this isn't offensive, he's kind of portrayed as a weirdly maybe autistic guy.
I would absolutely say that. I've thought that for a while. He's borderline ASD, and whether that's an act or that's part of the thing that ties into his Batmanness, they never really address, obviously. It's 1989. But I mean, really, he's sitting in a huge room having dinner with Vicky Vale at the opposite end of table that is
huge.
100 yards long?
Yeah.
It's a football field.
What's wrong with you, Bruce Wayne?
Yeah. And then they just go eat in the kitchen.
Yes.
Or my personal favorite, it's Japanese. How do you know? I bought it in Japan. It's so offhand.
Yeah.
He's just, that would absolutely throw people off the scent of his double life.
Sure.
Without the problematic aspects of a bunch of women he doesn't care about getting short shrift.
Okay.
I'm saying.
All right. I had never thought about it like that, but I think it's an interesting point. Can Bruce Wayne still be kind of strange and weird enough that no one would suspect him without being the Playboy? I don't know. We got some fun Christopher Nolan bits out of it, so I don't know. I'm game.
I would have wanted to do it without the Playboy stuff, but if you're going to make that choice, Nolan did that really well. I will say, and this is something Nolan did not do very well, damn convincing voice change between Bruce Wayne and Batman and Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, okay, so I've got to throw this out there. And Kevin Conroy, but by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and lay the bias out here. Kevin Conroy is Batman. Everyone else...
I'm on board with that.
Everyone else playing Batman, he's Batman. Yep. Okay, you heard it. That's my 2 cents. So every episode you listen to this podcast, that's where I'm coming from. But I will say, his Bruce Wayne voice sounds awful. In a way that it's intentional, totally separate, but I was like, wow, this guy sounds like I just want to punch him in the face.
I think that's on purpose.
Yeah.
And it does become a little less overtly rich douche as the show goes on. He settles into its first episode.
Sure.
He settles into a thing, but even when he settles into it to a less monocle-wearing Bruce Wayne kind of voice, there's still a big change to the point where I am off-put when he answers the phone in the Batman costume using Bruce Wayne's voice in this episode. Mm-hmm. It throws me hard.
So that's Bruce Wayne. What do we think about the Batman side of things? Obviously, he's our star character. And I think one of the things that both you and I noticed when watching the show is how this particular episode sets him up kind of adversarial to the police. He's doing his own thing, and the cops don't like it.
Yeah, or at least most of the cops don't like it.
Most.
Yeah. I mean, to the point where the mayor is, we'll talk more about this, but the mayor's setting up task forces to deal with him. I really like that tension. That's a very Batman Year One kind of, the comic book, Batman Year One kind of tension put in there. It also goes away.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I think before the first season's out.
No, okay.
It stops being a thing.
So if I recall, the Mask of the Phantasm, there's a big police chase scene in that, but I honestly don't remember the cops intervening much after that episode.
No, we're going to see it a little bit where Bullock never, we'll talk more about Bullock here in a minute, but he never warms up to Batman, not really. But it just becomes less of a plot point over time. But I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
He's a vigilante.
Right.
It also shows the layers of stuff that are going on in Gotham City.
Right.
Everybody is not Team Batman on day one.
Right.
Speaking for myself, as a longtime giant Batman fan, one of my favorite things that they do with Batman here is he detects things. He is the world's greatest detective.
So he investigates things.
He does. He solves mysteries.
So him and Scooby-Doo, they're pals. This is what we're
Only
hearing.
those couple of episodes.
Oh, God. That did happen, didn't it? It did happen. Yeah, so no, I think that's a great point because we see this kind of old school, kind of PI investigative style detective work versus coming back to more contemporary Batman times. I think even the Nolan films did touch on it in a way. It was more like CSI, so it was a little more contemporized. But this is taking it back to more of a classy when we think about
I'm going to go to a crime scene.
Yeah,
I'm going to look for clues.
Right.
I'm going to figure out what these clues mean.
I'm gonna and has a very strong sense of intuition and how he assembles the clues.
Yeah, and then I'm going to go talk to people about them, and people are going to make a mistake, and then I will solve the mystery. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and it keeps coming up a lot. I'm going to pass to you. Tell me how you feel about Commissioner Gordon, because I love Commissioner Gordon. I have strong Commissioner Gordon feelings, but I'm a Batman guy.
Okay,
right?
So I'm just going to throw this out there. Firstly, this is a statement both to how much better this animated series was than the Batman films of the time, and also how poorly the films got Gordon. Those films back in the 89 Batman, Batman Returns, both of those, because he's kind of a doofus in those. He's
definitely
he's dumb. He just I guess he's sort of vaguely pro Batman, but it's more like he's just incompetent. Versus here, where it's very clear that he's a very competent commissioner that just happens to let Batman get away because he actually kind of just is like. I don't know. I don't see what the problem is. I think he's actually doing some pretty cool stuff. I mean, if you want me to look into it, I will, but I really don't want to.
And by the time we open up on him in this, he is actually in a shouting match with the mayor about how he will not be going after Batman.
Yes.
Which I want to say it's quietly pro-Batman.
It's pretty pro-Batman.
Well, I say quietly because he never says, just let the man work. He just says, I won't do it. You'll have to go around me. Which the mayor's happy to do. But I mean, in comparison to Bullock, who is saying, I'll bring him in, and Harvey Dent, who says, and I'll prosecute him, I'm just not going to go after him is subtle in comparison.
Right.
No, I really appreciate this. He almost sometimes seems like the only competent cop on the Gotham Police Department. But I really, I got strong feelings.
And I just think this is a really great introduction to the character. And, I don't want to spend this whole series comparing our characters from one version to another. I do think the Nolan films really upped the ante eventually with that character that hit a home run. But, I mean, this is, in my mind, this is still kind of the iconic Gordon character. Here's what he does. He's not totally letting Batman off the hook, but he's just kind of looking the other way very intently. Very intently. He's just like, guys, really, there's other crimes to look at here. Yeah.
Obviously, there are more important things than Batman, like the people Batman catches.
Now, I can't say the same thing about Detective Bullock, though.
Yeah, Detective Bullock is clearly anti-Batman and eventually anti-vigilante as a whole because he never likes the Bat family either.
Right.
So how did you feel about that? Did you feel the tension in the Gotham City Police Department?
Oh, no, I did. I think it was really great tension because what you have, because anytime you have police commissioner, highest guy on the force, he knows this guy, Bullock, is going around his back and doing his thing. That's going to hurt. That is office politics, city politics at its worst.
By the way, city politics are a big deal in Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, huge. I love the sleazebag. Now, he is based loosely on the character from 89 Batman. Sort of.
Actually, Batman 89 had a character called Eckhart, who was loosely based on an obscure character named Sergeant Bullock from the comic books. Early 80s, way early 80s. Only used a couple of times. And then Eckhart kind of gets that dirty, greasy cop feel added on to that guy. Yeah, it's kind of an around-the-about way. But I will say they do such a good job on this version of Bullock. He keeps showing up and stuff. By the late 90s into the 2000s, he'd gotten a couple of his own limited series. I think like Bullock Law of Gotham or something. And of course, we'll ask now, but bypass any opinions for the moment. Do you watch Gotham?
I have seen the first, probably about 10 episodes of the first season.
And Bullock is huge in it.
Yeah, he's one of the main characters.
And he's played by Donald Logue, who I love and was almost enough to make me care about Gotham. I guess I did slip an opinion in, but I didn't mean to do
it's
that.
Good. I think you're good because this is really where that character found some success, found a fan base, and has grown and has now made him a staple of the Batman comics.
That actually happens a lot on Batman the Animated Series. We'll see that happen again with Renee Montoya in a huge way, in a way that nobody who just put a female cop in Batman the Animated Series ever could have imagined. But yeah, Bullock, he's huge. I mean, he became a guy in Nolan's Batman. He becomes Donald Logue. He gets these limited series. It's not unheard of. For instance, Jimmy Olsen actually appeared on the Batman radio show before he was a comic book character, so it's not completely unheard of for that kind of thing to, feed back in on comics, but you definitely see it here.
Yeah.
Speaking of city politics, you also see that with another obscure character, also from the early 80s. All of a sudden, we have to care about the mayor of Gotham City.
Wait. I'm sorry. Did you say there was a mayor in Gotham City? I mean, I never knew that there was a mayor. I just assumed it was a police commissioner in Batman.
Just ran the whole place, right? Fascinatingly, Batman the Animated Series is pulling from early 80s stuff where having a mayor mattered, where city politics mattered, because Bruce Wayne was kind of doing political stuff and Batman was doing vigilante stuff, and Mayor Hamilton Hill didn't love it. Did not love it.
Is this back when they still handed the keys to the city out?
Yes, but late enough that they didn't do it to Batman anymore.
Rats.
That would be more mid-60s. So, however, Hill becomes kind of a long-running piece of world building because eventually you will hear Caleb and I talk about Batman Beyond, and Terry McGinnis, the Batman of the future, attends Hamilton Hill High School.
When you told me that kind of blew my mind for a second. It sounds exactly like something Bruce Timm and Paul Dini would do, but I never considered that detail ever.
Yeah, I only noticed because I was reading Batman comics at the time, so when I saw the show, I was like, oh, cool, they're using the mayor. Wow, we haven't seen him in a while.
Because the mayor, he's in episodes of Batman the Animated Series, but he's still kind of like a throwaway character.
Off and on. It depends. We're going to see some organized crime episodes where he's important. We're going to see one of my favorite episodes where his son is very important. So, I mean, he bubbles up, bubbles down. But another character from city politics that we will never be able to stray far away from is District Attorney Harvey Dent.
Introduced in the very first episode of the show.
If you don't know, don't look ahead. We're not going to talk about it right now. It's a real subtle, long game, slow burn introduction to this guy.
Right. Very important character that'll have a huge impact down the road for sure.
If anybody in that office, this is the mayor's office, if anybody can seem neutral, it's Harvey Dent, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He doesn't say he hates Batman. He doesn't say leave Batman alone. He says, you catch him, I'll prosecute
He's
him.
the law. He's like Judge Dredd. I am the law. He's just flat. Like, he's like, all right, well, you guys bring me the criminal, bring me this vigilante, and sure, he's breaking the law, so I'll prosecute him. Yeah, but he's very cool-headed, level-headed. It doesn't seem like he feels strongly one way or the other. He's actually just kind of hanging out, flipping a coin.
He is flipping a coin, half in shadow and half not.
Yes.
Hint, hint. And our last non-villainous character introduced in this episode, Alfred Pennyworth, butler to the Batman.
Yeah.
Is this your big introduction to Alfred for you, Caleb?
As a kid, yeah, I'd say so. I will say, BTAS, Alfred, why I like this version, I think this is a great introduction to this character. This version didn't stick with me as much as some others. I was really kind of surprised. Most of the other characters, when I think about these characters, I think of their animated incarnations. Mm-hmm. Alfred's not the case.
Who do you think of?
I actually legitimately think of Michael Caine, which is strange, which is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
But it just kind of happens.
Well, he does a great job.
He does.
I mean, he nails the Alfred that they want him to be in those movies.
Right. Well, and he presses a lot harder than I think this Alfred does because they're at a different point in the relationship.
It's true. No, that makes a huge difference. And we don't quite have a finished Alfred in this episode. We are going to get another voice actor. The amazing Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. is going to take the foundation they lay here and just kill it.
Oh, yeah.
But no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can see where Michael Caine would kind of crowd out this very dry martini version of Alfred.
I mean, he's in the show and he's great, but he's just not in it quite. There's never, I can't think of any particularly iconic Alfred moments from this character specifically. But again, great. They have a great sense of humor. They've got a great rapport. There's some good jokes they get in there.
My biggest iconic moment for this Alfred, probably in Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay.
They lay the seeds here. I'm not going to give that moment away, but there is an argument between Alfred and Batman where he says a thing that is such a dad thing to say in the best way, but an angry, like he's, you are forgetting our relationship right now, young man,
right.
Younger person.
Right.
But you get that foundation laid here They tell jokes at each other, Caleb.
Oh, yeah. Wait, Batman has a sense of humor?
I know. It's almost like he's a normal person that you would want to hang out with as a kid.
I mean, you know, if I was to look at film Batman, cinematic Batman, I would assume that he is a humorless, he's stiff.
He's certainly so committed to, you know, the war on crime that we can't even crack a joke out of the outfit. It's weird.
Nice coat.
Oh, I forgot one joke.
He's got a joke. He's got jokes, guys.
He's got jokes. But for real, Alfred drops jokes on him.
Yeah.
Batman jokes back. They're both very dry. But you're right. The Michael Caine brings a lot more energy because it's that early time. If you can imagine... Well, I guess you can't imagine in Dark Knight Rises, but if you can imagine a better 5 years later,
yeah, fair point.
If you could imagine a better 5 years later, you can imagine them kind of settling into this.
Listen,
relationship.
I like to think of Alfred sitting in a French diner, looking over. Okay, anyway, never mind. We'll move on.
No, you don't.
Move on. No,
you
I sure
don't. That's
don't.
a damn lie.
I sure don't.
Now we're gonna have to talk a lot about our villainous character and why he was such an interesting yet brilliant choice for this episode.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Joshua. So here's something that's really important to understand about Batman and Batman the Animated Series. All of his villains, all of his rogues gallery, the reason they're so memorable and strong is because, at least the way they're implemented here, they're all reflections of our hero.
Absolutely.
They all are either showing the flip side of the coin, like the differences, the things he lacks taken to the extreme, or kind of showcasing some of his failures as a younger Batman, and challenging him to kind of fight his demons from the past in pretty much every episode in one facet or another.
Yeah, in fact, it's going to stand out when they aren't opposite number villains.
Right.
We'll have one in the next episode that we talk about, actually.
Correct.
And she's still great, but she stands out as not exemplifying one of these things. But Man-Bat is probably the most on-the-nose example of this you could have.
Well, yeah, because usually we're thinking psychological battle. We're
Right.
thinking philosophical difference. No. This guy is just actually surface level, the opposite of Batman.
He's a humanoid bat.
I mean, Batman, Man-Bat, flip-flop. There you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really it. On the surface, considering most Batman villains, weird choice.
Yeah, why not open with the Joker? Why not open with Two-Face? Why not open with Mr. Freeze? Or why not open with the Penguin? A lot of choices out there.
When you take that deeper dive, though, what I love about this, we're talking Bruce Timm, Paul Dini. There are names that are going to keep showing up in this show. They get how story works. We mentioned a very noir opening with adversarial relationship with the police for Batman. Well, one reason for that is some of them legitimately think he's the one who's doing these chemical robberies because the eyewitnesses are all describing giant bat monsters.
Right.
That's a lot of very clever thrown shade. It lets us talk about that adversarial relationship with the police without making that the point of the episode.
So, Joshua, I'm glad you bring that up. So, that does provide a hint of mystery, right? So, if it's not Batman, who could it be?
Who could it be, right?
Blah, blah, blah. It's the Man-Bat. Okay, well, where does the Man-Bat come from?
Yeah,
again,
who is he? What's he want?
What's he want? What's his motivations? And I think, again, this goes back to the thing that this show does really, really well. Overall, throughout the course of the entire series and on an episode-by-episode basis is by introducing a mystery and spending the time of the episode unraveling the mystery. Because, again, it goes back to the detective work. We are with Batman as he is solving these crimes and solving these cases and trying to learn the details. And that's kind of the sense of discovery on full demonstration here.
This is essentially a forensic mystery.
Oh, yeah.
This is 1992, so we are pre-CSI as a juggernaut concept.
Right.
Ostensibly a kid's show. And he's solving a forensic mystery.
Yes.
And what's more, we also get to kind of see the limits of Batman's ability here, too, right? He's very good at many, many things. He finds the clue, but he has to get help to fully realize what the clue is.
Right.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
That's pretty nuanced storytelling right there.
Right. Shows his limitations. This is before the meme, because I'm Batman, like where Batman just does everything. Well, no, guess what? Batman actually has limits, guys.
And they're limits that make sense. And they're limits, incidentally, that I really appreciate this, that Bruce Wayne gets to approach from a different direction.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
That's pretty great. We get to use Bruce Wayne's influence to solve crimes.
I think something you see a lot more earlier in the series than later is that Bruce Wayne actually has a role to play in a lot of these episodes. I definitely think the further we go down this rabbit hole, the less and less Bruce Wayne we actually get throughout the entire series.
It's true. That is a thing that I lament, honestly, that Bruce Wayne kind of fades into the background. We're talking over the course of 4 or 5 years, but he fades very much into the background, where here at the beginning, he really mattered. You're going to see it again in Pretty Poison. Like, Bruce Wayne as a person wasn't just a disguise for Batman, which is nonsense. He was just another way that he fought crime.
Right.
Man-Bat lets us also see how good the animation is going to be in this show.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Anecdote moment from the commentary on the first episode. The Korean art house, this is one of the 2 episodes that this art house had to sell this team on them doing the majority of the art.
Right.
You can tell that they wanted it. The other one's Heart of Ice. We will have a lot to say about Heart of Ice.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
But in this one, look at that amazing aerial chase between Batman and Man-Bat.
Oh, amazing.
So good. Spiraling through the air and, and the running the length of the Zeppelin.
Oh, and just the Zeppelin in general.
The
Holy
Zeppelin?
crap.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Great. Again, it's a mini movie. That is real bona fide spectacle that I don't know if had ever been seen in animation on TV, at least up until that point. Like that, it is cinematic. It's exciting.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and
it's beautiful.
And it's something even today we don't get to see that level of spectacle in a lot of programs.
Tying into that, I can't pin it because I've seen a lot of anime in my life, but the transformation from Kirk Langstrom to Man-Bat is really reminiscent to me of kind of werewolf something or demonic transformations from anime of the time.
I think the werewolf. I think if you go way back to the old school Wolfman transformations, that's something I think the werewolf thing is definitely an apt comparison, more so than the lizard or anything like that. I think when you're watching those transformations, the way they edit it and cut it, it really looks like it's something from like an old 30s or 40s horror movie. When the guy he just turns his head and there's the wolf head. It's kind of like that with the Man-Bat thing. I think the anime though, it's another really great comparison.
It is that thing that you're talking about. It's Lon Chaney through an anime lens, which is pretty amazing. To your point that we had never seen anything like this before. Years and years ago, I bought this first season on DVD, and it just so happened that the Disney Cartoon Channel started also showing the Spider-Man animated series that is 100% contemporary. They are literally beginning on top of each other.
Right.
And so my wife is watching both Batman the Animated Series with me, and then incidentally, because I'm having nostalgia moments from when I was much younger, the Spider-Man one. And when I point out to her that these came out the same year, she thought I was lying. I don't remember what I looked it up on, since I don't think that I could have just hit Wikipedia at the time. It was long enough ago, but I was like, no, I can prove this. To your point, that Spider-Man show is okay.
It's okay. It has not held up nearly as well as Batman the Animated Series.
It does not look fresh.
It doesn't look fresh. There's so much over-explanation of everything. Peter Parker's monologues are obnoxious to no end.
The weird computer-animated 3D stuff that they do for swinging through the city, yikes. Yeah, it just
doesn't hold up.
The idea that these were literally contemporaries, virtually starting at the same moment.
Right.
And to have such disparity between the thing, it's no wonder BTAS stands up and still looks fresh.
Right.
However, speaking of Spider-Man the Animated Series, and speaking of your genetic recombinator.
Yes, I have to mention it. So, no. I think that's great. So, one thing I think that this reminds me of is there was a late 80s, early 90s, we had a weird obsession with genetics, with genetic mutations. I mean, look, Spider-Man the Animated Series, we had the lizard, obviously, but look, other pop culture, Jurassic Park came out a year later, genetic engineering. You've got The Fly, 1986. Again, there's a very similar idea. Like, basically the same story, really. I was messing around and I accidentally turned myself into a bat, a fly. Whoops.
Whatever, same thing.
Yeah. And then a few years later, from one of my favorite filmmakers, Guillermo del Toro, we got Mimic, which, again, same thing. Hey, here's what happens when we mess with genetic mutations. It's weird because of everything in this episode, that's the most 90s thing that I can come. Like the style, everything. The style is timeless. All the animation, the voice acting, all of that is timeless. But I do think that the use of the genetic mutation, I'm just like, man, looking at everything that came out about that time, I forgot how much we were really into that. We were obsessed with that idea.
Absolutely.
Pre 9/11, that's the type of stuff we used to obsess about. You know?
It's true. You look to a lot of science fiction, and science fiction is usually both showing us a glimpse of the future and also the stuff we're worried about right now.
Right.
And we really thought that was going to be the scary thing.
One last mention is the film Gattaca, which is like, hey, we figured out how to do genetic engineering. Again, we just have this weird anxiety. Again, pre-9/11, when we weren't at war and we were just thinking about other things, that was the thing. Oh, what happens when we actually start messing with our DNA because we have the technology now? So I think what you see just an onslaught of stories about that. And while Man-Bat, as you say, was conceptualized in 1974, I really do think that the use of that character in this episode is telling. Yeah.
Choosing this as the first episode that we're going to produce of this series, 100%, I think, says something about the mindset of 1992, for sure.
So what do you think, Joshua? Do you think the first episode lives up to the reputation of Batman, the animated series, then?
Definitely. It's beautiful. It makes weird choices, but weird choices that show they understand story in a way that a lot of cartoons weren't even bothering with then.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There was a level of sophistication and artistry that I think was on full display here, unlike what we'd seen. I mean, of course, in animation. But again, this is timeless stuff. It's great artistry because it still stands up. Yeah, there are things here and there that might be a little dated, but I mean, ultimately, I think you're looking at a pretty timeless piece of pop culture media and superhero media.
Not just timeless, but so trend-setting that in a way, we're still reacting to it.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
I mean, we're still reacting.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about Batman, the animated series, is when we look back at there's going to be a time when superhero movies are not absolutely everywhere all the time.
It happened to Westerns.
It happens to, exactly.
It happened to doctor shows on TV.
Yes. And it happened to CSI, like we just talked about earlier.
That's true.
Like we go through these spells, as a culture, we go through these cycles, and sometimes they last 15 or 20 years. But when you look back, Batman, the animated series, I really do think was a monumental show that has influenced, permeated every aspect of superhero culture. Even if people who watch pop culture media might not know it, you can trace a lot of these ideas and stylistic choices all the way back to 1992.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if nothing else, it spawned an animated universe.
An animated universe that's still, in my mind, probably arguably the most successful animated superhero universe that's been adapted.
As far as like an organic growth of, we're just going to do this Batman thing until it makes sense to introduce a Superman.
Yep.
Until it makes sense to introduce a Flash.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. I think that's really perfect. And I don't want to spend too long, belaboring the point, but this show was pitched as a show. There was never any plans of a Superman show until they realized, oh, this Batman's doing really well. Just like there wasn't plans for a Justice League. And yet, as we talk about, all of these series, you're going to see that with great storytelling, you plant seeds for future stories that you can use later. Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, the creative forces behind the DC animated universe, brilliantly finds a way to tie up almost all these big loose ends by the end after almost a 15-year run. So.
I mean, in a way that we weren't even necessarily looking for.
Exactly.
Because along the way, they had done so much good incremental storytelling. And again, there are episodes that will be better to talk about than this. But I mean, when you tell a good story, even the kids will dial in when it's not for them. But yeah, so I think it totally holds up. Sounds like you agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am really excited to see how future episodes we're going to talk about hold up against this particular episode. But I think this is just it's a great episode one, and it showcases everything that we're going to come to love about the series in a really, really great way.
Agree.
Fun. I'm going to throw you a curveball, Joshua, as a kind of a fun kind of closing segment. For this particular episode, what would be another piece of media? So it could be superhero related, of course, or even if a film or a TV show or something you would if someone likes this episode of Batman the Animated Series, what would be a good recommends for you? I can start off there. I mentioned
lead the way and give me a minute to think.
I actually mentioned The Fly. I think if you're into this weird mad scientist, accidentally turns you've got to go see The Fly.
It is a classic piece. Now, you mean 1986?
86, yeah, with Jeff Goldblum.
I mean, honestly, I'd say the same thing for Vincent Price.
In the original, yeah.
But
they're good for different reasons, though.
Exactly.
Yeah, but those are both great examples of the same type of story, I think. And if you want to see where this episode gets some of its inspiration from, I don't think you can go wrong with The Fly.
I'm gonna make a Batman rec this time. There's a literary pedigree here that you can take a look at with something like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. 100%. I mean, that's where really Lizard's a ripoff of Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, they all, and that's the thing. They all go back.
Just back.
Hey,
Wolfman. Wolfman's before Jekyll and Hyde.
Nothing new under the sun,
absolutely.
My friend.
But the Man-Bat as a character, Kirk's wife becomes She-Bat for a while. Like, they crop up and go away through the comics for a long time. But for my money, the best use of them is when they're not even the ones who are Man-Bats, because Grant Morrison does a long-running Batman opus that starts with a story called Batman and Son, and the big thread in Batman and Son is a host of Ninja Man-Bats.
Oh my God. Ninja Man-Bats.
Ninja Man-Bats. And the creator of the Ninja Man-Bats blackmails Langstrom into giving her the serum in a real supervillain kind of way. It's really well done.
Well, I think this has been a great animated discussion about On Leather Wings. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, and all manner of other sorts of pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. On Twitter, again, that's at letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief at a film website that specializes in in-depth critique and analysis of film, thecinematropolis.com. And we publish essays on all types of films, good comic book movies, all that good stuff, including some thoughts from my co-host Joshua here. And you can find all of those at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough, at Joshua Unruh. I'm happy to field any superhero questions you might have, and who knows, it might even become a podcast unto itself. I'll also keep you in the loop on any fiction, articles, podcasts, or diatribes I cast out into the world, including my work at the Cinematropolis and for Pulp Diction Productions and Press.
Join us next time for Pretty Poison, where we find out how well Batman can combat his very first femme fatale, and that's going to be episode 5 of the first season of Batman the Animated Series.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Animated Discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following at Joshua Unruh on Twitter, or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions.